How's it going, guys? I'm Jared and welcome back to Avalanche Reviews. Now, it seems to me that when anyone talks about great arcade experiences, it's typically the same group of games that everyone's familiar with. Almost like the only titles that games journalists or reviewers want to cover are games like The Simpsons, Street Fighter, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But I'm tired of classic arcade titles falling by the wayside. So today, in honor of those arcade hits that have gone largely unappreciated, I give you Avalanche Reviews' Top 5 Underrated Arcade Games. If there's anyone who knows the subtle intricacies of making a kick-ass arcade experience, it's SNK. These guys ruled the arcade scene in the 90s with classic titles like Metal Slug, King of Fighters, Fatal Fury, and our number 5 entry in this list. Clearly not a product of its time, Shock Troopers instead feels like a ridiculous 80s action flick. In the game, you can choose from 8 different soldiers who are separated by gender and race, but all share a commonality for kicking ass. From here, it's up to you whether or not you want to go in as a team of 3 or a badass lone wolf. Lonely wolf. Wait, what? Fuck is a lonely wolf? So, after you pick your Technicolor dream team, because who wants to be a wolf that's lonely, the player is given a choice of 3 starting points. Each of them lead to the same place, so it's up to you to decide how you're going to tackle the situation. After choosing your way, you'll notice Shock Troopers descends from a long line of arcade greats called 8-way shooters. Much like Ikari Warriors, you run around in a quasi-top-down environment and shoot in 8 directions, but holding down the fire button will lock you into whatever direction you're facing. Your starting machine gun is enough to get the job done, but you can also pick up badass weapons like flamethrowers, Gatling guns, and 3-way shots. Unfortunately, these have limited ammo, but depending on what character you use, you will also have a certain type of heavy damage dealing grenade at your disposal. And most importantly, a dodge roll that'll be your best friend when the screen fills with bullets. Things can get pretty hectic here, and you'll be happy to know that Shock Troopers controls wonderfully. Movement feels natural, and I never felt like the game was cheating me to devour more quarters. But don't let this lull you into a false sense of security, because the game can be tough as hell. Despite how challenging it is, I always found myself trying to pick it back up and getting further. It's that perfect kind of difficulty that punishes you for your mistakes but never feels unfair. Shock Troopers is an amazingly fun game, and sadly one that rarely gets the respect and admiration it deserves. It's worth mentioning that Shock Troopers did do well enough to get a sequel. The graphics this time around have gone for more of that Donkey Kong Country style of digitized sprites, and I think it looks great. It also carries over the same addictive gameplay from its predecessor, and I struggled to decide which one deserved a spot on this list, but in the end, the first game made the biggest impression on me. Those of you looking to find Shock Troopers have a couple of options. A physical copy can be found in the SNK Arcade Classics Volume 1, released on the PS2, Wii, PSP, and PlayStation Network. A digital copy of the second game can also be downloaded from the Wii's Virtual Console, and apparently it's an arcade-perfect port. No matter what format it's in, Shock Troopers is crazy fun and way too good to be as unknown as it is. So if you're a fan of arcade shooter action and you think you have the balls to tackle it, Shock Troopers may just be the ass-kicking you've been looking for. Beat-em-ups are kind of a timeless genre. Ever since the early days of Final Fight and Streets of Rage, the formula has remained unaltered. And for a while that was okay. In every arcade there were games mimicking that walk to the right, fight baddies format and knocking it out of the park. But sometimes you have to tamper with perfection, and that's exactly what Capcom did with Battle Circuit. Not happy with the simple mechanics of a beat-em-up, Capcom added the guts of a fighting game and the move upgrades that would later find their home in Devil May Cry. Instead of giving players a few punches and kicks, Battle Circuit brings the mechanics of a fighting game to the table. All kinds of different moves are at your disposal based on button combinations, directions, and special inputs. Each fight feels very unique because you have so many options to deal with enemies. And while we're on the subject of uniqueness, this game's art design, story, and overall feel is just wacky. Upon firing the game up and getting to the character select screen, I found that among the 4 selectable heroes, one is a little girl riding an ostrich, and the other is a giant plant monster. It was this moment when I knew
shit just got real.
In the game, your character is an intergalactic bounty hunter who's chasing down Dr. Saturn, when you find that he's gotten his hands on a disc that may activate a computer system that has the ability to control the weather. A couple of levels in and the plot thickens when you find out that there's a sinister organization chasing down the disc as well. For a brawler like this, Battle Circuit has a lot of story. There are dialogue scenes at the end of almost every level, and they're pretty damn interesting. The story as a whole kind of feels like an early 2000s anime series, and the engaging characters kept me interested in seeing how everything plays out. As far as I can tell, this game was never released outside of arcades, and if anything, this only cements its position on this list. Battle Circuit proves that when you have rock-solid brawling with an emphasis on combos in one hand, and a genuinely interesting story with well-written dialogue in the other, you have one hard-hitting, badass beat-em-up with enough lasting appeal to keep you coming back for more. Okay, so most of you who followed my show for a while probably saw this one coming, and yes, I realize I may sound like a broken record at this point, but how can I not put this game on the list? It's an absolute blast, and it very well may be one of the best multiplayer games ever made. And yes, I realized I'm a little biased on this, but I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself, so let's start from the beginning. 1972, Pong revolutionizes the game industry, inspiring a worldwide gaming revolution. Fast forward more than 20 years, SNK employees snort powderized Pong cartridges to come up with the ultimate video game experience, and succeeded. Okay, so Windjammers is a little simple, like dead simple. Really and truly, there are only two buttons used in the game. One that pulls double duty is a dash and throw button, and the other volleys the disc in the air. You have a choice between 6 multicultural Windjammers and a plethora of unique arenas, each one with varying sizes and obstacles. The idea is to throw the disc in your opponent's goal. That's it. Kind of a simple idea, but the intricacies come in the way it's executed. While there's no button dedicated to weak or strong throws, you can change the speed or angle of your throw based on the timing of your button press and the direction you're holding. With this simple set of tools, you can do some really amazing things. It's possible to curve your disc with the right level of finesse, and you can also perform super throws that change based on timing and direction. After a couple of minutes, the game's mechanics become clear, and the simple but deep controls become muscle memory. This is when matches really start to heat up. If you guys have seen any of my Windjammers tournament videos, you may have noticed these matches can get a little intense. A product of the late 90s SNK explosion, Windjammers is filled with neon colors and great overall design. Even though there were much better looking games in your average arcade at this point, let's be honest, you're not going to be playing this one for its graphical prowess. The only bad thing I could say about the game is that SNK never ported it to any home consoles, and your chance of finding a cabinet in the wild are slim to none. So you're going to need to swallow your classic gaming pride and use an emulator for this one. But trust me, you'll be glad you did. A room full of friends and a couple of high-intensity games of Windjammers are all you need to make some amazing memories. And maybe a couple of new enemies.
2 points.
Way to go!
Set. Game set.
I think we can all agree that Battletoads on the NES was responsible for some unforgettable moments in our collective childhoods. For example, I'm sure you guys remember your first time juggling birds in level 2 for easy 1-ups. Or maybe that moment you finally beat the speed bike part. Oh, I know. How about that time you grabbed a giant rat by the dick and punched him in it till he died? Wait, you don't remember smashing your enemies with concrete till they erupt into a fountain of blood? Well then, allow me to introduce you to the Battletoads arcade game, or as some have come to know it, Super Battletoads. Created by Rare in 1995, Super Battletoads is about as far removed from its consoleized big brother as you can get. I mean, most of the basic elements of the original have returned. You still have the choice between Zitz, Pimple, and Rash, and each one is still able to morph their bodies into hilarious forms to rain down punches and kicks on the local rap population. But believe me when I say Battletoads is a whole different animal than the game that spawned it. Weapons can still be found and picked up, and the general controls remained unchanged. Hell, the Dark Queen even makes an appearance, but this is far from the Battletoads you have come to know. The biggest change is probably the most obvious one by now, the excessive blood and gore. Blood is all over the place in this game, and while it's cartoony, it's still the last thing you think you would see in a Battletoads game. Despite some of the obvious differences, Battletoads is still essentially a beat-em-up, but everything's been cranked up to 11. Every attack has a very graphic and painful effect on the enemy, and I found myself changing up the way I played just so I could see the different hilarious, gory animations and effects. Come on now, how often do you see a game that has enemies getting beat so bad that they puke? The humor you remember from the original has also made a triumphant return, and to be honest with you, when it's juxtaposed with this bloody and graphic violence, it's a little disturbing, but in a good way. Almost all the platforming elements have been stripped away, and in my opinion, this was a good move, as it left all of the focus on kicking ass. and kick ass it does. Fighting enemies stays fresh with a varied arsenal of animations and takedowns based on what you're hitting them with and how well you're doing it. Some amazing sprite art also keeps things from getting repetitive. Each stage is varied and visually impressive, and they also serve as homages to stages found in the other 2 games in the series. And while we're on the subject of graphics, this is what dreams were made of in the 90s. Beautiful colors, great design, and effects you couldn't find on home consoles of the day. And especially when it comes to the game's insane use of sprite scaling. To be honest with you, I'm not really sure why Battletoads went largely unnoticed in arcades at the time. As a matter of fact, I myself only heard of it last year. With some top-notch graphics and solid beat-em-up gameplay, I can only assume that most gamers were more interested in the 3D revolution that consoles like the Sega Saturn were ushering in, which sadly led to the Battletoads arcade game never being released on any home console. So if you're going to try this one out, you're going to have to either emulate it or track down a cabinet yourself, but either way you're guaranteed a great time. Battletoads is that perfect combination of great graphics, solid gameplay, and 90s gore that we never knew we wanted in a game. I don't care what your stance is on emulation, go out and play this game by any means necessary.
Mission complete.
Ever since refining the fighting game genre to a science in its second iteration, the Street Fighter franchise has been a beacon of the community. Since the very first game in the series, Capcom has fine-tuned their formula and sometimes flat-out created a new one, but it seems like there were a few obvious standouts in their lineup. Most gamers cherish entries like Street Fighter II Turbo, Third Strike, and Street Fighter IV Arcade Edition, but for me, the Alpha series has always been a culmination of how good a fighting game can be. Dubbed Street Fighter Zero in Japan, the Alpha games have added elements to the series that are still in use today, and its drastic retuning of the franchise's key players has always felt just right to me. Naturally, Capcom had mastered their formula by the time the third game in the series had been released, and in my opinion, Street Fighter Alpha 3 is the most underrated title in this 2-decade-old franchise.
Street Fighter Alpha 3.
When you first start the game up, the differences are very clear. Coming in hot off the heels of Street Fighter II Turbo, Alpha featured all new redrawn sprites and an increase in frames of animation. The new look of classic Street Fighter characters and the great design of the new ones makes for one very impressive presentation. However, the sprites aren't the only thing that received a retooling. Alpha 3 feels like a completely different game with altered physics, enhanced juggling, and a sped up overall play speed. And the most important addition are 3 different fighting styles called isms. After selecting a character, you're given the choice between X, A, and V-ism. Each one slightly alters the way the fight will go down. For example, altering things like air blocking, guard gauges, and special bars. These small but very important tweaks can really change the way a fight goes down, and gives players with different styles a chance to play the game their own way. But aside from all the technical differences, Alpha 3 just feels perfect. The game's speed is just right, not too slow but not too fast. The amount of time you're left open after an attack is very small, but just enough to string together some really cool feeling combos. Every time I pull off something as simple as a quick 4-hit chain, I feel like I've really accomplished something. If you're looking to grab yourself a copy of Street Fighter Alpha 3, don't worry, it was ported to almost every console ever. And a lot of these copies are still in circulation and can be found for a pretty good price. It seems like Capcom really took their time with Alpha 3 and tried to fine-tune their mechanics to perfection. And in doing so, I feel like they created one of the most fun, balanced, and perfected fighting games I have ever played. Well guys, thanks for watching another top 5 list. I know this one was a little bit long, but I had a blast putting it together, and I hope you got a kick out of it too. Now I am just one man, I can't play every arcade game ever, so why don't you guys sound off in the comments section and let me know what obscure arcade titles I've been missing out on. And for you newcomers, please feel free to hit that subscribe button and check me out on Facebook or Twitter. And until next time, I'm Jared, and this has been Avalanche Reviews.